So, welcome to 3D People, The Way We Work, a podcast created for Alexander Daniels Global. My name is Julia Opria, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's panel discussion with my wonderful guests and partners in a very interesting campaign. Before we start with a round of introduction, I'd like to talk briefly about this panel discussion and also why we all came together. Janne Kyttanen, Alexander Daniels Global and the Barnes Global Advisors, we all have something in common. We want to advance 3D printing, and we're doing this in different ways. Janne is creatively advancing 3D printing as a pioneer in the industry. John Barnes and his team are here to help industrialize additive manufacturing. And Alexander Daniels Global, where I also work, is contributing to the growth of this industry through talent and HR consulting. So we partnered up for promoting the salary survey on the employer side. So what is the salary survey? It's the most comprehensive salary study in the 3D printing industry, and it provides the benchmark for salary packages in this industry. The results provided from both the employer and the employee side show key insights into additive manufacturing specific trends, into salaries, into hiring intentions, candidate motivations, in-demand skills, what attracts talented professionals, and much more. The salary survey helps the companies to understand their talent motivations and to set the right remuneration packages to attract and to retain the best talent. The study helps the professionals on the other side to understand where they are in the talent market. This year, we will release the 5th edition of the salary survey, and we would like to invite you, a representative of a 3D printing business, to fill out the survey and to contribute to the study. Our campaign has 3 big prizes, and today we will want to introduce to you the team which offers the first prize if you participate in the salary survey campaign. One lucky winner from the employer side will get a unique consultation package. More details will follow towards the end of this podcast episode. And now I'd like to invite my guests to introduce themselves.
Great, thank you. My name is John Barnes. I'm with the Barnes Global Advisors. We solve problems for companies. So we say we try to help industrialize additive manufacturing. We have an experienced team with over 130 years of experience in additive manufacturing, but probably more like 250 years of experience in just average everyday manufacturing. So we try to bring that experience to bear to get additive into products. And so with what we say is we bring, I think, clarity and insights to the people that we work with as they try to understand, a fast moving kind of chaotic space like additive manufacturing. We try to help them figure out how to drive that to product in an efficient, cost-effective manner. And as we always say, we're that interface between the science and industry. So we try to make sense of the science and put it in an industrial context for companies that are willing to go down this innovative path. And with that comes we have a 4-lens view: machines, materials, digital, and people. And on the people part, it's always overlooked. It's always ignored. But if you buy this, we all buy the same machines, we all buy the same materials, and we all buy the same software products. It's, the humans are the integrators of that. So how you get the awareness to education and to performing, then becomes critically important. And really, it's the difference between taking a long time to get there or taking a short time to get there. So it's a little bit of a product development view from our perspective. Yeah, so I got into the business back in the late 90s. As I always joke, I was the least valuable engineer at the jet engine company that I worked for, and got put on a project on some scientists that were leaving Sandia National Labs. And that was my first exposure to it. And I've kind of been in and around it for 25 plus years. So I just like it. I think I got lucky and it just kept coming back to me. So I left my corporate job about 3.5 years ago and form my own business to help support the maturation.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Janne, over to you.
Over to me. So, hi everybody. My name is Janne Kyttanen, and I've also been, I don't have 200 years of experience like John has, but I'm kind of in the 20 plus.
And I'm the Transylvanian here.
That's perhaps right. So also long history in the industry, and I really got bitten by the bug somewhere in the mid 90s. Had a long history already in the 3D graphics and 3D modeling and product design only at the time, and I kind of found out these technologies, and it was kind of this light bulb moment for me, like, oh wow, so I could just make these 3D files and make any product and feed it to this printer all around the world. And so I kind of had this flash light bulb moment going through my brain, and I kind of immediately saw how the world was going to evolve with these technologies, with these 3D tools. And ironically, Napster was coming into the market pretty much at the same time. I'm like, oh, wait, so if they can do that in music, they can digitize music distribution. We should be able to do that in the same way with products. And I've never, looked back since, so and also from a comfort perspective, I preferred much more to sit on my ass on a couch and make 3D files rather than go to a workshop and start bending metal and cutting wood, So, and then of course, from there onwards, I was so passionate about the whole industry and the processes that I started designing all different kinds of products for different industries, from lighting to interior products to eyewear to footwear to all kinds of, I've touched so many different industries on my path. And of course, my passion has more been about helping people and helping companies and helping industries to digitize. So I'm pretty much still on that path, but of course now a little bit looking at it from a bit of a bigger and broader perspective. At the time, imagine you're 20 years old, you're very passionate about pulling points on a computer and designing a shoe or designing a lamp or so forth. And now my interest is more about, okay, how do we design an entire industry? How do we design systems? And it's far more complex, from supply chains to politics to inventory management to logistics to design to software platforms, all these kind of things. So what really drives us to help companies digitize themselves, but also not looking at the world from a very linear perspective. As in, I see a lot of great consultants in the 3D printing industry, but they're more about okay, how do you run a machine? How do you, what kind of material should I use? Or, what kind of software should I use? So we're more about really trying to look at the very, very big picture. How are you able to change a specific industry by using these tools? So for me, the creativity has moved away from designing that simple product, but as in how to design an entire big picture for, whether it's a medical field as a whole, or aerospace or automotive, or one technology that we're very, very busy with today is a packaging industry. So how to digitize an entire packaging industry via 3D printing, and what those end applications would be, and who do they create the most value for. So within this context, we're creating value networks around all these different companies. There might be a software company coming into play where we can create value for, a packing company, a consumer brand company, and so forth. So it's really about, for me, doing this full loop of creating these kinds of concepts that we're able to creatively add value for everybody in the value network.
Thanks.
Okay, I think my turn maybe. So I'm Nick Pearce. I'm the founder of Alexander Daniels Global. I'm going to just reverse up the order a little bit and perhaps start with why I got into the industry. So I'm a recruitment entrepreneur by background. Set my first recruitment business up 10 years ago, recruited accountants because that's what I knew what to do. And then about 6 years ago, I saw how additive manufacturing was really changing people's lives as it was applied to medical applications. I thought, wow, this technology is unbelievable, and its impact on, people is really, quite profound. So, I spent some time researching the industry, and after about 9 months, I'd kind of somewhat started a company in additive manufacturing recruitment. And made it our mission at Alexander Daniels Global to enable the revolution in additive manufacturing through talent. So really the problem that we solve for companies and the value that we bring to our clients is people. When I first did that research 6 years ago, we found out about the challenges the technology faced: speed, repeatability, availability, and price of materials. But every company we spoke to said there was a real lack of talent in the industry that really was constraining its growth. So we set about, helping to overcome those problems by engaging with talent to access careers in the industry. So now what we do is we help companies right across the value chain, whether you're a 3D printer manufacturer, a software company, an adopter of the technology, or a material developer. We help you recruit the team that you need to be successful within the industry. So yeah, in short synopsis, that's us.
So this is us who came together to do something cool. I thought it would be great to dive deeper a bit into the topics, and maybe you guys can explain a bit through something that you've worked on recently, what exactly is that you're doing and how you're bringing this value to your clients. John, would you like to start?
Sure. So I think the one thing that when we deal with businesses is they have difficulty with the fact that additive is a disruptive technology. And so there's this kind of proposition that you're either all in or you're kind of always fighting it. In an engineering context, I always talk about it as a friction hill. So, you can't climb up the friction part, and at some point it gets easier, but you have to kind of fight the resistance for a little while. And I think that a lot of companies get stuck on the hill and never get over the side. So just yesterday, I was participating in the FAA EASA series, and SpaceX, gave a presentation, and it was a fantastic presentation. And it started in a way that is very common. They mentioned that they were basically at a point of desperation, and they decided to use additive. And then once they did, they were like, this isn't nearly as bad as the technology we were using before. And then off they went. So they went up, fought that friction hill, and then all of a sudden an opportunity arose, and then they never looked back. So I think that's the challenging part for companies. And in a sense, this is a little bit of the dialogue that Jan and I have been having, because he's more on, I would say, on the creative people side than I am. But I think where we kind of come together is on that people kind of corporate psychology piece, which is how do you get these things which are very multidisciplinary, into maybe it's a company that's been around for 200 years. So they've, they are who they are, but yet they want to be able to access this technology, and they're not going to reinvent the company just so that they can use a manufacturing technology. So, as an example to this, we have a very good relationship with NASA Jet Propulsion Labs, and so they are having this absorption problem. They, have been successful in using additive. They've got parts going to Mars that have been made in additive manufacturing, but they kind of see that their absorption is kind of limited due to the way that they're organized, and so it's interesting. It kind of falls back to like these are the smartest people, at least in North America, maybe, but they recognize where their limitation is, and it's more on the absorption side. How are they going to get it into more people's hands so that they can figure out how to look at things? And so the way that they kind of view the world is they take a concept and then they break it down into smaller bits. And the problem is that additive doesn't come into the equation until they're already smaller bits. That's not a very productive place for additive to exist. So they need to come back to more the conceptual side. Okay, well, the conceptual side is now a very risky place to be proposing something, that doesn't have a lot of experience. So we've kind of worked with them on how to think about that problem specifically. We've had some success. We did a training program with them back in January, and out of that, they had 4 funded projects emanate out of it. So I'm not saying that they're all going into space, but they all have a chance now of going into space, whereas before they were just fleeting concepts.
And were you doing these trainings online or on site? This was in January, right?
This was in January, so we were on site.
You were on site.
Before the world changed. So So we've since then done some things with them online, you know, in 4-hour kind of Zoom, WebEx, you know, styles. And it's been focused more at trying to hit the people component, talking to decision makers and program managers to get them to comprehend why they should even care about any of this. And so there's that way of absorbing the situation. We also offer the Purdue, we're the creators of the Purdue AM certificate, which is 100% online, you know, move at your own pace. And that kind of solves a different problem. It's more for individuals that have a desire to credential themselves and move forward. And then, you know, recently we do have a very long-standing relationship with Baker Hughes, and they're a good example of a company that overcame the friction hill. They took a very traditional path. You know, there was the evangelist. He gathered some people. I always remember that YouTube video, you know, the first follower, you know, creates a group. So the crazy guy dancing. Yeah. So they'd overcome that part. They had, you know, the center of excellence of about a dozen people. And then they looked back on their organization. They said, we've got 10,000 engineers in this organization, you know, 12 people divided by 10,000, you know, that's going to take a long time. So they kind of brought us in to kind of give that thing some structure. So you need a certain level of people that have awareness of what additive is. You have people who are experts, and then you have like super experts, you know, the ninjas of additive. And so you don't need those things in equivalent numbers. You kind of taper as you go up the pyramid. So we with them though, you know, it's fascinating. Every single time we give the training, we do a team-based assessment to gather what they're learning. And the one thing I like about this technology is the designers are like center stage on this technology, and they've been kind of pushed aside for years because the CAD packages do more and more of their job. But with this technology, it actually requires a bit of creativity. So the designer's now back in the spotlight as being enabling, and it was great. We had this one epiphany, and the guy raised his hand. He was like, so if I understand this correctly, what you're saying with, you know, DFAM is that I don't control the cost of the equipment. I don't control the cost of the material, but I do control the cost of the part by figuring out how to make the design print quickly and with the least amount of material. And I was like, perfect, you've passed, congratulations. So, you know, it's great, you know, it's still great to have those kinds of situations where, you know, the way he characterized it was perfect. And I kind of paraphrased it, but to me, that's, you know, kind of when it starts to make it all worthwhile. I mean, getting paid is nice too, but you know, it's nice to be involved in a business that you get both. You know, we're seeing the reward by hopefully doing a good job, and people pay us to come back, and then you get the people side, and you get to see this, you know, on an individual basis. There's always that kind of light bulb that goes off, and they're like, oh, okay, I think I see where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
John, with the work that you do with companies, you know, do you sort of see, you know, much awareness of the technology as you sort of dig deeper? You talked about Baker Hughes there, and you have to have the evangelists, and you had 12. What does the wider awareness look like, you know, when you kind of get deeper into the organization around the technology? Are they now recruiting bright graduates who have touched it, you know, at university? You know, what do you see, and what changes have you seen over the years around the awareness of its potential?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit like additive itself. It's very tribal. You know, you have people who are, you know, let's say maybe they got involved when plastics was big, and so all of additive is plastics to them. So time never moved on. You know, they're still existing in that space. What's interesting now is because the allure of 3D printing for young people, and they've had it in primary schools, they've had it in the middle schools, et cetera. So they're coming out with a phenomenal level of experiential evidence that it works. They don't necessarily understand what manufacturing is, and they don't even associate it with manufacturing. So far, that's probably a good thing due to the kind of connotation with manufacturing. But, you know, what we see is we try to build this thing, and I'm sure Jan has seen this as well, but you know, you've got a group of younger, ambitious people that have, like, they already appreciate what 3D printing can do for them, but they don't understand manufacturing. And then you've got this legacy workforce, myself included, which was trained on subtractive largely, and is trying to forget everything that they learned on that, but maintain the critical bits that this thing has to make critical parts every day. And how does that relate to this new technology? So you kind of, you know, probably in about 5 or 10 years, we're going to be in a good spot, but we've kind of got these weird two populations of people with different skill sets coming into the mix.
I can really resonate with that. I mean, because again, you know, if I also answer to Nick's question a little bit, is like, when I got started in this industry, I had no manufacturing experience whatsoever. I'd never injection molded anything. I'd never bent any metal. I'd never CNC'd nothing. It was just, the only thing I knew was 3D printing, and I was programming video games. So I'm like, well, I should be able to translate my video game into this product. And, you know, I'm not asked, you know, even, it doesn't even come to my mind about draft angles or, you know, it doesn't even, it's just an anomaly. I mean, it doesn't even link to my brain. So it's just like, I got something on my screen and I'll make it on this machine, and that's it. It's the only thing I know. So to answer that question, it's like, I think the kids of today, and that's also where it gets very interesting to kind of mix these different disciplines, you know, and bring those kinds of young people into the mix, you know, because they only understand the digital world, and they will, like my kids, for example, you know, they will not know a world where things are not 3D printed. It's just not going to happen. It's all, they're going to be their norm.
My kids are already bored with it.
Yeah.
But I think part of that, you know, when you look at additive, it's a bit more diverse than manufacturing is broadly. And, you know, when we've studied this kind of situation, I look at it in more brains looking at a problem is usually better. And so, you know, on the thing, so the question is, have we really gone after the legacy technologies the way that we're going after 3D printing? So, you know, we built things on physical constraints, you know, and that's understandable, and it's a logical pathway for it. But I'm also conscious that, like, you know, in the US at least, 20% of engineering degrees go to women, which is up from 1% in the 60s. You know, so I always say, in the height of the Cold War, we had 50% of the population engineering a solution. Now, I don't know, there's a lot of complexity to that, but it just seems like the more that we get these more diverse brains into the solution, the better manufacturing is going to be altogether. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're very keen on advocating, you know, people of all backgrounds coming into additive, because it is so sufficiently diverse in terms of technology that you don't know where the next good idea is going to come from. And in some cases, it doesn't, as you've pointed out, it doesn't mean you are an expert in injection molding. It's just because you wanted to make a plastic frog.
Yeah.
John, one of the other things that you obviously champion and now run is the Purdue course. And, you know, one of the challenges that we see, you know, from a recruitment standpoint within businesses is, you know, there's always been a gap between the demand for talent and the supply of talent. And I think, you know, actually this year's salary survey might be one of the most interesting ones, because those supply and demand dynamics might have changed because of the effect of COVID. But the course that you champion is quite a good one for people who are perhaps looking to make that entry into the industry. Am I right? And, you know, perhaps how do you sort of see, you know, that course and others helping to kind of bring more people in and upskill, at least at the entry level, enough talent to meet the demand that the industry has now and going forward?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think that, well, we have evidence that shows that the people who, you know, go through the course, you know, seem to get an immediate benefit from doing it. And we had one individual who, you know, used the data from the course to generate a business case to bring in a 3D printer, the first one into the company. And then now he's in charge of it. And then they wanted to give him additional Six Sigma training, et cetera, so that they could be, you know, incorporated into what they do. So we do see positive benefits coming from it from an individual standpoint. And I agree, there needs to be, I think because the technologies move so quickly that, you know, there's no sort of outline of what is the right thing to study. And so when you look at, like, I kind of include MIT and us with the Purdue and even with our onsite and a few others, you know, that the outline of the content is very similar. And so that methodology seems to resonate with a certain amount of people. You know, at the end of the day, I always say, you know, we have the Purdue course. I went to Purdue. It's a state school. There are people who will want, you know, private school. There's no reason why you can't have both. You know, we were dealing with one very large automotive company, and the person that we were speaking to had already taken the other course, and, you know, just kept saying, oh, well, they did this and they did this and they did this. And I was like, yeah, we do that too. We just do it a little bit differently. We think about the problem a little bit differently. And finally, the third person on the phone call said, you know, we're a big company. We can do both. They're both good. So yeah. The point isn't what's the best. The point is what works for the individual, because we don't all learn the same way. I'm a very visual learner. I was rubbish at taking tests, and I hated reading things. And now I'm trying to tell my daughters that they need to read things, but I'm a little bit guilty of it myself. But so we definitely see the advantage, and you know, you definitely, I think, see it's a tight labor market in additive. I think this year's been odd for sure, but my observation is that as soon as some of the individuals, you know, are on the street, they're not on the street for very long. Mm-hmm. So I always used to kind of joke about it, that in the early days we had the A+ students, and they in some ways intuitively figured out that the machine was going wobbly or whatever, and then just instinctively did stuff about it. As you need the wider pool of people, you're starting to get the B students and the C students, and they don't care, and they don't have the intuitive sense for it. But that's where the training kicks in, which is, oh, wait, I heard about this. It means that my laser's drifting. It's out of calibration. I need to go, you know, do something about it. And this is what it means if I don't do it. So I'd like to think that it is critical. And I think the one thing that's missing in the industry is really sort of like that. We get companies that come to us and they just don't know what they need. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people that are trying to put content out there versus having a few bodies saying, this is actually, you know, the structure of what you should be trying to incorporate. So that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I also resonate with that a lot. I mean, John, what you just said in the last sentence. I mean, there's so many companies that they want to do something in this space, but they don't exactly know what. We just need some 3D, but they've got no idea how to integrate it. You know, what kind of people they should hire, what kind of talent they should find, where they find the talent, how do they put in the company, and all that. So it's a little bit of I would say growing pains, like any new technology for companies to integrate.
I became curious of something I read on your website, John. It was, you were talking about that your business wants to grow the industry safely. I was curious what that means for you.
Well, for us, it's a couple of things. I mean, some technologies do use highly pyrophoric powders, so there's the simple element of doing that wisely. But, you know, we also know that in any industry that's moving in highly regulated markets, that a failure, however you wish to define it, would set the industry back. And so, you know, principally that's what we're after, which is, you know, how do we help people do that in a way that their strategy makes sense? And it is more of a strategy approach, which is, don't try to go after the fully latticed, all up, you know, fancy gizmo thing, because that's what looks cool, because that's also going to be high risk unless you have the knowledge and skills and all of the specifications and everything to go with it. Mm-hmm. And this is a little bit where we came up with the maturity model approach, which says as my product requirements increase, my skills and knowledge have to kind of go with it. I can't just start running a marathon having never run a 5K. At least you can, but it may not end well for you. So that's kind of what we mean by safely, which is it's partly choose the right parts, choose the right market, to introduce it, and get the people with the skills or skill them up accordingly to help you transcend that little stair step.
And actually, if I were to comment on that, that's also where, as John said before, like having the more brains you have on the table, the better, because we were totally the opposite to John. So he wants to make things, safely, and we'll do the complete Wild West scenario, and then probably the truth is somewhere in the middle, so you got to take some risk at certain time, and sometimes you got to be safe. And, I would say 99% of the cases of the big companies, they want to be on the safe side, unless they have the venture arm that can, go do wild and crazy things. So, yeah, just wanted to put it out there.
I mean, I think that we've evolved into this world where we see conflict as bad, but I mean, there's good conflict and there's bad conflict. So creative conflict is good. I will always want to go back and trade something on paper. Like, is there a destination on this? But, Jan's approach, which is I'm just going to go do it, that has space, and you have to kind of allow for both to occur, I think. And
90% of those things will fail, and trust me, I'm failing every single day, and then magically 1 out of 100 ideas actually becomes something. So.
And it's so interesting that you said creative conflict. This is one of my magic phrases that I like to use.
Wow! All right.
And because it's so important, and I think creating taboos and not allowing conflict is actually what kills creativity. And we spoke about this with Janne in the value networks. And maybe we can also move over to you, Janne. You can talk more about how you're working, what you're working on right now. But it's so important that you somehow allow a free flow, but in a creative way. That's creative part is the key here, not the
and especially letting different brains on the table. It's like there's this I don't know, something just came to my mind. I can't remember where I saw it, but it's, let's say if you were to design a creative pencil, whatever, most likely the creative, if you were to pick 3 people to design a creative pencil, I would not go and do it with a pencil designer. I would go and I would pick a nurse, a mother, and a tattoo artist. For sure, you come with something totally weird and different than an incremental improvement to the pen. So, and that's kind of to categorize a little bit how we do, so how we create things. It used to be that I would be very what would I say, not a little bit more reactive, that companies would come to me and go like, hey, can you help us create this or design this and creatively think of this process or whatever. And now I would say 90% of the things that we're doing is more the other way around. So we see these moonshot ideas, and then we're trying to pick those right companies that it fits to, and just go all in and try to make reality of these things. And of course, doing it in a safe way, in a way that of course to a certain extent, the mathematics also need to make sense. But so let's say the consulting that we do is more about finding an idea, finding an industry, and then going directly to them and try to, let's say, sell it, or try to open their minds how these kind of technologies might change their way of looking at the world. And many times these are very shocking ideas, and they're, a lot of these companies are not ready. So I would say that 99% of the cases I fail, and I'm not able to get these, especially big companies behind these ideas, because they're so radical. But at the same time, getting older and getting a little bit more wiser, I also have the Excel, right next to me, and go like, listen, guys, it makes sense. Your culture might not be ready, and your company might not be ready, and the industry might not be ready, but it does make sense. And I give you one example that we've been working on for last 3-4 years, very, very intensively. And it's again one of those ideas that we came up with. And I'm always triggered by looking at industries that have not evolved, who have not digitized themselves. So I always see like there must be something here that is holding them back, and what are those ideas that might propel them on the next level. Either we help them to improve, or we completely go and disrupt them. And thermoform packing is one of those areas that we've been busy with. And again, like most industries, they incrementally improve themselves, getting a little bit better process, better systems, and better software, and better this and that. But what we've done with this specific venture is that we've transformed a packing industry into an injection molding industry. So imagine you have a machine that runs in a certain cycle, and it creates X amount of value for, let's say, 5 minutes, you're able to make X amounts of products. So what we've done with 3D printing is that we've completely transformed an entire manufacturing process by, let's say, in 5 minutes, you can make X amount of profit by making these pens. But what if you were to make, these products within 5 minutes, you would be able to make 1,000 times more money by completely rethinking how to use that technology. And that's where 3D printing comes in play. But it's a very, very small part of that, what I was explaining before about this entire value network. Like, how does that then connect to software, and how does it connect to politics, and how does that, distribution, and all these different things. So that's why many of these things that we're working on, it takes a long time. Because it's not like you can just go to a company and they've been around for 100 years, and you expect them to, they're like, hey, here's this 3D vehicle, and with that you're able to make 1,000 times more money. Regardless, they'll keep on doing what they've been doing, but hopefully we're able to infiltrate their brain, bit by bit, in order to start transforming themselves. So kind of that's what we do, So creating these moonshot ideas, going to these companies, and try to help them digitize. And if they're not open to collaborate with us, then we'll just try to disrupt them ourselves.
And I think a different way of looking at that, and we see that in the product space. So when we go in and talk to companies, we always do that 5 whys, and so what we found is a lot of these industries are so mature that they have no real knowledge of the requirements anymore. Loosely they know the requirements. Yeah, we need to make it cheap. We need to make it the same way every day. But I recall one company we're working with, and they were saying, oh, well, we need 4 micron powder. And I was like, oh, well, why do you need 4 micron powder? Well, it's a metal filter, so we need surface area. Like, okay, are all filters designed by surface area? Well, no, you do some by design. In other words, you create a tortuous path. I was like, okay, so do you need a 4 micron powder in that stitch? And they were like, no. I said, but what are you guys good at? They're like, well, we're good at design. And I was like, so why are you so caught up on the 4 micron powder?
That's
so then
absolutely on point. It's exactly the same way. And I'm just referring to our thermoforming industry disruption areas. Like they have I'm like, what is your end goal? Yeah, we need to make this blister pocket. Got it. What is the accuracy that you need? We need this. I'm like, okay, well, we can do that with a tool that is 500 times cheaper, and we'll do the same thing. So all of a sudden their head starts spinning around, like, yeah, but we want to make this pocket. Like, yeah, I know, but we have a different path to get to the pocket. You don't need to use your existing tools, which are 500 times more expensive and far more ineffective, going to your 4 micron powder. So they're so caught up in their own world that sometimes people need either 2 things: smack in the back of the head, or cold water in the face, whatever will wake them up. And
Shock therapy,
yeah. I mean, and of course, I need also, to collaborate with people who are a little bit more political and trying to get it there in the right way, So that's also where the great brains that come together. And this is just my way many times to wake up people, and many times it also doesn't work, So it's maybe too much too early.
And I think that, it's our approach to that, without resorting to water or smacking somebody, is to continue to hammer down what are the requirements. And so they'll say, oh, well, we have large cast parts. And I was like, oh, okay, so the customer requires you to have large cast parts. Well, no, they don't care how we make it. It's just that's the cheapest way to get there. I was like, okay, so cost seems like it's a requirement. Yeah, cost is a requirement. Okay, well, so why would we care about, weight in additive? And then somebody eventually will come up with, oh, because mass equals time on the printer and time equals money. Yes. Okay. So we're making some progress, but it's fascinating to go through these transitions, with the teams, because it's like, well, it has to be cylindrical. Like, oh, okay. So the customer said that the part has to be cylindrical. well, no. And then you find out that it was because that was the way Fred 50 years ago figured out a way to pour powder into a cylinder, and that was the method of doing it. So therefore, it just became sacrosanct. So the same thing can be said of, the organization. And so it's like, oh, well, you have to have a stress team, and you have to have a design team, and you have to have a materials team, and you have to have that. And then all of a sudden, you come in with like systems engineering. And so systems engineers are the people who try to wrangle all of those disciplines together. And like, okay, well, if you need a systems engineering organization, it seems like maybe having all of these tribes being separate, isn't a good thing. So, in my background in aerospace, we had integrated product teams. That was the rage in the 90s and the 2000s. And it was good. It was a multidisciplinary team. You'd have a materials and process person, you have a design person, you have a stress person, you had all of the things were collected around a section of the aircraft. But it was there to minimize risk and to maximize safety for these very complex products. And you don't need that all the time. Obviously, not everything's as complex as an airplane.
So one key takeaway from that is also, and John is doing really, really good job in it, is to navigate through these companies by really asking the right questions and really kind of taking them on a journey. And, these are perfect examples. And most of the time people don't even internally understand to ask those right questions because they've been doing it for the last 100 years exactly in the same way. But I'm also facing a lot of times challenges with companies where, let's say, I'll come up with a solution with somebody that is 1,000 times cheaper, more effective, every superlative under the sun for them. But if they're already successful, let's say they're doing, 20, 30, percent EBITDA per year, and, everything is all hunky-dory and great, they're kind of getting into that comfort zone where they don't, we don't need to innovate. We own the industry. We're fine. Go away with your 3D tools.
Yeah, and then all the cases where something happens and you can say goodbye to that approach.
Yeah, you can, but most companies, they're just not, very difficult for them to listen if they've been doing it for so long. And people have their safe, secure job for the last 30 years and they've been doing it all this time. They're like, I'm fine. I go home at 3, pick up my kids and go in a park and I'll be fine, so.
Well, what I'm hearing is how important clarity is in both areas, and I know that it's also what we're working with, and Nick will then tell you guys more about it, and how these asking the right questions and getting to a point of clarity as much as possible is what then ends up helping our clients. Shall we move over to Nick?
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm listening with interest to what both of you have just said. And I think, some of the challenges that you both face within the clients that you work with are, somewhat cultural, which ultimately comes down to having the right people and the right mindset within the organization. So, as I sort of said at the outset, our mission as a business is to enable the revolution in additive manufacturing through talent, and that really starts with us, first of all, understanding a business, then understanding what the goals and objectives of that business are, and then helping to find the people that are going to be able to realize those goals and objectives. Probably, I can do this in the same way that you have by talking a little bit about the types of clients we work with and how we actually help them. For me, I love the technology, and one of my favorite companies that I'm working with at the moment is a novel photopolymer business based in the US. I actually met these guys at TCT last year. I just happened to be walking past their booth, saw a guy who I now know to be the VP of sales playing with an application on the booth, and I was just watching the way he was kind of like bending and twisting this kind of like part, and I was like, I've not seen anything like that. I couldn't believe this was a 3D printed part, if I'm honest, the way he was manipulating it. So I just bowled on over and I said, hey, what's this? he didn't know I was a recruiter at the time. He, kind of took me for potentially a customer. So I got the full spiel on the business,
You want to buy a machine?
product, and on the material. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And he showed me all these different applications and it was biocompatible. And I was like, wow, God, I've not, 5.5 years. I've been in the industry. I've seen lots of cool stuff. This is really, really cool. So then he asked me what we do. And I said, well, we recruit for the industry. That's what we do. And then we got talking about the fact they just got their Series A and they needed to scale up their team, and this is 12 months ago. And, okay, things have been impacted by COVID, but we've now placed a national sales manager in the US with these guys. We've placed a global partner manager to focus on Europe and Asia, and these are two critical hires into an organization that are going to help them scale their business on a national basis within the US and on a truly global basis throughout EMEA and Asia. And, beyond that now we're supporting them to identify process engineers, business development specialists within key vertical markets. So ultimately what we're doing for them and what we're helping them to do is go from a fantastic R&D led business that have created a really truly amazing material to a business that can scale on an international basis, and really get that material out into market. And some of the things that they're doing in, kind of footwear, for example, really are going to revolutionize industries. So, I see our role as being kind of central to actually a revolution that might take place within a market like footwear, and that really, really excites me. And it really what sort of drives, our business. But central to that and central to their success is those people, being able to find the right people. And, they're quite typical of the type of company that we work with now. We historically worked a lot with the bigger, more established businesses in the industry, but, increasingly now we're working with companies most people will never have even heard of. In fact, one of the companies we're working with hasn't even got a name. They're a pre-revenue startup that have just developed a really cool composite material that is going into space. And, we're helping to find them all manner of really crazy scientists that are going to, build parts that are going onto satellites and, stuff like that. So, a lot of these companies, really are just starting out on their journey as well. So we go beyond purely helping them find talent, more to helping define culture, organizational structure. And, this is a little bit where, perhaps in particular, if you're a small organization and you're starting out, sometimes you're a creative mind, who is very focused on R&D, not operationally, perhaps as organized as you might be, you might not be commercially as astute as you need to be. And what we can do, through the support that we offer is find the gaps that need to be filled in order to scale your business and ultimately help to industrialize the industry. So yeah, that probably goes a little bit deeper into kind of what we do and what we really love doing. And alongside that is the sort of concept that we've developed or sort of developing, which is this kind of HR kind of assessment or HR health check, call it what you will. It's a means by which we can work with an organization to, really understand, what their current capability is right now in terms of the expertise and skills that they have within the organization, the path that they're on and where they see themselves in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time, and what capabilities and skills they're going to need within the organization then, and then proactively support them on that journey from an idea or a small business post seed or post Series A to the next unicorn in the industry maybe, and through working closely with those CEOs in understanding their business and understanding their plans and their vision, we're able to add the kind of talent aspect to that and guide them on that journey. So So yeah, hopefully that gives a little bit more of a deep dive into what we're doing.
And as a part of our salary survey campaign, for which we came together in this partnership, we're all offering a consultation package, and I thought it would be great if we could all talk about it for a few minutes. So anyone who's listening and who would like to become the winner from the employer side will know what the first prize is about, and what is it that they can gain simply by participating in this competition, filling out the salary survey, and interacting us on our posts with a comment or a like. So I'd like to ask you all to just share in a few words, what is it that you can offer as a part of this consultation package as a main prize for the one lucky winner?
John, you want to go first?
Well, I promise I won't smack you in the back of the head, and I won't throw water at you.
I mean in a positive sense.
So I think, you know, my experience, what I'm good at is my parents are a history major and an English major. So I'm an engineer. So for my entire life, I've had to explain to smart people what something out of the engineering world means. So I'm usually very good at kind of seeking that clarity or the message that, you know, a company might need to talk to. So from the early stage companies, you know, it might be that kind of level of support, because what we see oftentimes is with the newer companies, they're still trying to understand what it is their value proposition even is to the market, and how do they need to tell that story. To the more, you know, seasoned companies that are out there, it probably falls more to, you know, maybe it's help with qualification and certification type issues, or, you know, into the training space and how they need to think about their organization. So, you know, probably somewhere bouncing between Nick and Jan, we will come up with a very comprehensive picture. But my guess is that would be kind of the areas that we could help.
Awesome. Nick or Janne?
I can go next if you want.
Yes.
So going back to my Napster story and how many companies sometimes need that wake up call, or they don't see what's coming next, you know. So what I can really offer help on is most companies, you know, again, they're very linear minded and they're trying to incrementally improve what they have, and they're investing money in innovation, but very few invest money in the creativity in a way that finding, what if you were to spend as much time on finding those ideas that will make you obsolete in the future. So I will promise you that I will find you a concept that will make your company obsolete in the future, and an area where you should be looking at. So you can pick any industry, and I will find that concept within your organization. And
you also wrote a Forbes article about it.
I indeed did, and it's actually a very simple way of doing that, and how to invest your effort into ideas that will make you obsolete. So I will find you that concept that will make you obsolete, and in many cases that will also then become a better business model for the organization, or even, you know, maybe a little spin-off, at least for the start. But hopefully those kinds of ideations can kind of put a smile on your face and see the world through a different kind of lens.
Well, and you know, I might just say, if 2020 has a silver lining, if this isn't the year to ask the question about
that question, exactly,
am I doing the right thing? I mean, it's giving you every excuse that you could imagine to say.
It's ironic, you know, because we have so many concepts that we have actually, even for ourselves, that we were like, you know what, let's what's the word again, where you promise, you know, do what you say and reap what you sow, is it the saying? Yeah, so we've had to kind of prove it to ourselves, like, you know, we had to disrupt ourselves, like we did not expect this. And I give you an example. So one of our ventures is in ice cream, and we've been working on this for a number of years now, and this year that's going to be a very big break for us on the session world. You know, so we started from a very small numbers that we can produce, and we've been growing and being able to prove that we can produce certain amounts. And this year was all going to be about theme parks, zoos, aquariums, all those places where you have completely, event space. It's packed with people, and we have concepts to be sold in those areas. We had a whole spring lined up, great business, and I'm like, this is going to be an amazing year. Revenue zero. So how are you going to lift yourself up? And that forced us to then disrupt ourselves and find different applications, and we're right in the middle of it. And I will be doing a lot more social posts about that in the future, but yeah, living proof of that.
So on our side then, what we're going to do is this HR health check for a business. So this sort of comes in three parts, but the starting point is an assessment that we would do with the CEO of an organization. And depending on the size of the organization, if it's a smaller growing startup and doesn't have a robust HR function, or indeed any HR, which many companies we work with don't, it would predominantly be with the CEO. But if it's a larger company, for example, that wins the prize, then it will probably be with the CEO and an HR director or an HR manager, or at least somebody from the HR team. So we would start off with an assessment, and through a series of quite probing questions, we would understand where the business is and where the business is going. Off the back of that, we would produce a report that we would share with the business that would then give some perhaps actions that the business might take to become better organized, be able to perform better, more cost efficient in terms of how it deploys labor and talent within the organization, and also what its strategy might look like going forward in terms of how it grows and how it can develop a culture and a team that can be ultimately a winning team, based on the objectives of the organization. So, that's ultimately the prize that we offer. But I would encourage everyone to complete the form anyway, because, there's an intrinsic value to the whole industry for people to take part in this survey. When we started with this survey 5 years ago, there was nothing of its kind. And, back then, we had, a handful of companies we were working with that took part, and, probably a couple of hundred candidates who filled out the survey. And every year it grows and it grows, and we get more data. And every year I get more and more feedback from companies saying, we love your report, we love the salary survey. Even now, 10 months on, people are still downloading the 2019 salary survey from the data that we collected last year, and we still get feedback that salaries aside and the information aside, it's the insights that it provides about the market that really do add value. So whether you win first prize or one of the runners-up prizes, there's definitely value in actually taking part, because ultimately you're contributing to something that has value for the whole industry. I think that's probably the greater motivator that people should be taking into consideration, despite the fact that we've got these collection of brilliant minds here with Janne and John willing to offer their time to a business, as part of the package of consultation that First Prize would get.
I remember when I used to work on the client side, I downloaded the salary survey because I had no clue about 3D printing, and it helped me so much as a person who was responsible for recruiting in Europe. I suddenly understood a lot about what I just said before about hiring intentions and demand skills, the salaries in the US and Europe, what's the difference. And then after that, I picked up the conversation with Nick and his team, and yeah, we've been working together for a year and a half before I joined his team. But this is really where I got most of my information. I learned a lot, and we really, really value both inputs. So it's really important. This is also why we're doing this campaign, to get input from both the employer and the employee side, so that we have a really strong study this year in our 5th edition. Okay, so what's the next step is really just, if you're listening to this or watching this, we will provide a link to the salary survey, which you can fill out. Please interact with us somehow on our post with a like or a comment. And we will also provide more information about participation terms and conditions. You will have a link which describes a bit more this whole campaign that we're working on here together with Janne and John. And it will end, this campaign will end at the end of November. So please go online, it takes just a few minutes. If you know the data that we are asking about, then please fill it out. If you don't know the data, do you know someone in your company who knows the data, please redirect them to the salary survey. And yeah, please contribute to this amazing study. As a last question for all of you who are here, just looking forward, right? We have less than 2 months from 2020, this very crazy year. I don't know what to think about it still. What do you think? How will your future clients know when it's time to get in touch with you? Nick, maybe you could go first this time.
Yeah, so I think it's really simple. You know, either you're a company that are thinking about growing, or, you know, recognize there's a certain skill missing within your organization, or you simply lose somebody that's gone to the competition. If any of those things happen, then you should talk to us.
Janne?
Oh, me?
You.
It always boils down to creativity, you know, but it's many times companies don't realize that they're missing creativity, and also companies should not make the mistake of creativity being somebody sculpting some weird sculptors in the park, but it's really all boils down to business, you know. So when you see that you're kind of getting stuck in your old ways, and you need to find a way out, and your business is getting stuck, that's the time you should pick up the phone or drop me an email, and we can start a dialogue.
And I think that, you know, 2020 probably, I don't know that it changed the conclusion. It changed the pace at which we adopted to that conclusion. So by which I mean, you know, the things that people are doing this year, they would eventually have done anyway. So I think that shock to the system caused them to reevaluate their priorities. When we talked to companies this year, they didn't change their priorities. They just focused on the really important ones. And so for us, I think, you know, when you're ready to, what we can save people is basically time to market. And, you know, in a sort of whimsical way, learn from our mistakes as we've implemented products when the technology was less mature, but the lessons are the same. And so when people are ready to, you know, really invest and make an investment not only in themselves, but also in their product, you know, I think that's where we come in.